In 1914, a German woman took a photograph of her young son and brought the film to Strasbourg for development, but with the sudden outbreak of World War I, she was unable to retrieve it and assumed it was lost forever. 2 years later, in 1916, she purchased a new roll of film in Frankfurt to photograph her newborn daughter. But when the film was developed, something astonishing appeared: a double exposure. The first image was her recent photograph, but beneath it was the very same picture of her son from 1914. Somehow, the old film had never been developed. Instead, it had mysteriously re-entered circulation, resurfacing 2 years later in the hands of its original owner. The writer Wilhelm von Schultz collected this and other cases where lost or stolen objects found their way back to their owners in inexplicable ways. He concluded that such occurrences seemed to be orchestrated by the dream of a greater and more complete consciousness, which is unknowable. Carl Jung was captivated by extraordinary coincidences, events so improbable that they could not simply be dismissed as chance. From his early studies of the collective unconscious, he encountered patterns and connections that defied scientific rationality. As he put it, "What I found were coincidences that were so significantly connected that their coincidental concurrence would represent such a degree of improbability that it would have to be expressed by an astronomical number." Surprisingly, it was Albert Einstein who played a key role in shaping Jung's thoughts on these mysterious events. Their discussions led Jung to explore the scientific implications of such phenomena, ultimately leading him to coin the term synchronicity. Professor Einstein was my guest on several occasions when we dined together. In those days, Einstein was developing his theory of relativity, and it was he who first made me think of a possible relativity of time and space, and his psychic conditionality. For years, Jung hesitated to speak openly about synchronicity, aware that the scientific community dismissed such ideas as mere superstition. But once he overcame this reluctance, he introduced the concept in lectures and eventually formalized it in his groundbreaking monograph, originally published in Volume 8 of his collected works. It was later released separately under the title Synchronicity and a Causal Connecting Principle, a book that serves as the foundation for this video. For Jung, events that seem to be the result of chance, but which contain a deep meaning for the one who experiences them, are susceptible of some causal explanation, and we should study them seriously. The psychology of all the sciences cannot afford to overlook such experiences in the long run. These things are too important to the understanding of the unconscious, apart from their philosophical implications. Jung's research extended beyond empirical and statistical analysis. He also explored the shared meanings found in philosophy, mythology, religion, and esoteric traditions. He was particularly intrigued by Hippocrates, who spoke of a universal principle present even in the smallest particle. He was also struck by the writings of Philo of Alexandria, who, in the 1st century, described the intimate connection between the beginning and end of creation. God, willing to unite in intimate and loving communion the beginning and the end of created things, made heaven at the beginning and man at the end. One, the most perfect of all imperishable objects. The other, the noblest of earthly and perishable things, being in truth a heaven in miniature. Philo believed that man carries within himself sacred reflections of the cosmos. It bears within itself as sacred images, gifts of nature that correspond to the constellations. This idea, that man is a microcosm reflecting the totality of existence, resonated deeply with Jung. He encountered a similar principle in the I Ching, the Book of Changes. The I Ching, which we may call the experimental basis of classical Chinese philosophy, is one of the oldest known methods of understanding a situation as a whole, and thus placing the details against a cosmic background, the interaction of yin and yang. For Jung, these ancient traditions reinforce the idea that synchronicity is not merely coincidence, but a profound connection between the individual and the cosmos. The I Ching is an oracular text used to seek guidance by posing a specific question. Through focused psychic intention, the observer interacts with the natural laws of cause and effect, prompting nature to provide an answer. The process involves tossing coins, which generate a response in binary form, odd or even. This result leads to one of 64 hexagrams, each carrying a symbolic message. Interestingly, this binary system is the same one the philosopher and mathematician Leibniz later used to develop his arithmetic, which ultimately became the foundation for modern computing. In the I Ching, the coins fall randomly, yet the response is not purely chaotic. The results reflect yin and yang, two opposing yet complementary principles present both in the unconscious mind of the observer and in the external world. This suggests a bridge between inner psychic reality and outer physical reality, allowing the I Ching to intentionally invoke synchronicity. A personal experience from Jung himself illustrates this principle in action. A young woman I was treating had, at a critical moment, a dream in which she was given a golden beetle. While she was recounting the dream, I was seated with my back to the window, which was closed. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me, a soft tapping sound. I turned around and saw a flying insect bumping against the window pane. I opened the window and caught the creature in midair as it flew in. It was the closest possible analogy to a golden beetle one could find in our region, a Sitonia aurata beetle. Contrary to its natural behavior, it seemed to feel the need to enter a dark room at precisely that moment. For Jung, this was a striking example of synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence where an internal experience, the dream, and an external event, the arrival of the beetle, aligned in a way that defied pure chance. An unconscious image, the scarab, that emerges in the patient's consciousness through a dream. An objective event, a real beetle unexpectedly appearing at the precise moment she recounts the dream. At the very moment Jung and his patient attempt to decipher the symbolic meaning of the scarab, that same symbol manifests physically in the external world. Since the scarab holds an archetypal meaning, Jung is able to interpret the synchronicity and use it to help his patient progress in her therapeutic journey. This led Jung to define synchronicity by two key factors: an unconscious image or symbol that surfaces into consciousness, whether through a dream, idea, or premonition; an objective event that coincides meaningfully with that symbol. If both elements are not present, we are dealing not with synchronicity, but with mere synchronism, a meaningless coincidence that lacks symbolic depth and does not contribute to the expansion of consciousness. In the I Ching, this dynamic unfolds intentionally. When we pose a question, we create the first factor, a clear mental picture. The response, expressed in binary code, links our consciousness to a hexagram in the book, which carries symbolic meaning, revealing the second factor. This structured process allows us to actively invoke synchronicity as a means of insight and self-discovery. The method of the I Ching is rooted in the idea of synchronicity, a principle that suggests events can be meaningfully connected, even if there is no apparent causal link between them. This concept can be difficult for the Western mind to fully embrace, as it challenges the deeply ingrained rationalist worldview that insists all phenomena must be explainable through cause and effect. In the West, anything that falls outside of this framework is often dismissed as mere superstition or coincidence. However, Carl Jung invites us to reconsider this bias, arguing that our rigid adherence to causality may actually be a limitation, one that prevents us from perceiving deeper patterns in reality. Synchronistic events, according to Jung, are not mere accidents or random occurrences. They are bound together by meaning rather than by direct causation. This suggests that reality itself may be more interconnected than our conventional scientific models typically acknowledge. But to explore this further, we must be willing to question some of our most fundamental assumptions, especially those concerning space and time. For Jung, space and time are not fixed, objective realities, but rather constructs shaped by human perception. He argues that these concepts originate from our own psychological needs, designed to help us navigate and make sense of the world. If this is true, then it should not be surprising that space and time can also be influenced by psychic factors, our thoughts, emotions, and unconscious processes. As he explains, as such, space and time are concepts of essentially psychic origin, created by the intellectual needs of the observer. Their relativization by psychic conditions, then, is no longer a cause for wonder, but lies within the limits of possibility. This perspective suggests that our understanding of reality is incomplete if we rely solely on conventional science to explain it. Perhaps synchronicity is not an anomaly, but rather an indication that the universe operates on principles we have yet to fully comprehend. Jung proposed that synchronicity should be seen as a fourth fundamental principle, alongside space, time, and causality. Together, these four form a tetrad, a quaternion, which he represented as follows: space, time, causality, synchronicity. From this quaternion, Jung derived a deeper structure. Above, space, indestructible energy. Below, time, the space-time continuum. Left, causality, the constant connection of cause and effect. Right, synchronicity, the shifting connection through contingency, equivalence, or meaning. By adding synchronicity to the traditional framework, Jung challenges the rigid, mechanistic view of reality, proposing that meaningful coincidences may reveal a hidden order in the universe, one that transcends simple causality. Jung's proposition is both bold and revolutionary, suggesting that the very nature of human existence is rooted in synchronicity. If psychic and physical processes are meaningfully coordinated beyond mere cause and effect, then perhaps the relationship between mind and body is not simply mechanistic, but synchronistic in essence. This challenges the traditional scientific model, which tends to separate the material and the mental into distinct realms, treating consciousness as a byproduct of physical processes rather than an integral part of reality's deeper structure. Jung recognized that synchronicity is elusive, difficult to define, and resistant to conventional scientific representation. It does not fit neatly into established frameworks of thought, making it easy to dismiss. Unlike causal explanations, which follow predictable patterns, synchronicity operates through causal connections, events linked not by direct causation but by shared meaning. This made Jung cautious in his claims. He never presented his ideas as definitive truths, nor did he attempt to force synchronicity into rigid scientific models. Instead, he approached the topic with intellectual humility, recognizing that it remained an open question, a mystery to be explored rather than a certainty to be declared. As he concluded his work, Jung left his readers with a thoughtful invitation rather than a final judgment. I do not consider these statements as a final proof of my views, but simply as a conclusion of empirical premises, which I would like to submit to the consideration of my reader. In doing so, he left the door open for future inquiry, encouraging others to look beyond the limits of conventional thought and consider the possibility that synchronicity may hold the key to understanding not only the connection between mind and matter, but also the deeper fabric of reality itself. Ultimately, the decision is left to you. Will you choose to see synchronicity as meaningful, an unseen order shaping the connections between mind and world? Or will you dismiss it all as mere coincidence, believing that chance is just chance and nothing holds deeper significance? The choice is yours.